about minerals.
That's right, Sarah. And you know, a lot of folks think about minerals, they think, well, I put out a yellow salt block or a red salt block or something of that nature. That's really not minerals.
It's called trace mineral salt blocks for a reason.
Exactly. Very few traces of minerals in mineral salt. Now, that's not to say that your cattle don't need salt, okay? You can provide salt, but don't think that's a mineral program. And I would provide that separately from my mineral if I was going to do that. There is a place for salt and mineral, but we probably won't get into that in this very basic video. But what we need to think about is that we have several different classes of cattle on every producer's farm. We have mature producing cows, we have first calf heifers, we have dry cows, we have weaned calves, we have bulls, and all of those have somewhat different needs. And to further complicate it, depending on what we're feeding as a supplement, if we're supplementing those cattle, can indicate different needs in terms of minerals, especially in calcium and phosphorus. But everybody asks me, what's a good mineral? And the basis to start from is that we want a calcium to phosphorus ratio somewhere between a 2-to-1 to a 4-to-1 calcium to phosphorus. We also need something with an adequate, what's adequate again depends on needs, but probably about 1,500 parts per million of copper. Then we need something that is low in sulfur and something that is low in iron. That's kind of the basis to start with. But then again, we start thinking about the economically important things to us in the beef cattle industry, that being reproduction, that being health, those kinds of things. That brings into play what the finer points of mineralization actually is. So Sarah, the immune system of the animal is very economically important.
Exactly. If cattle are not healthy, no matter their age, if they're not healthy, they're not producing for us like we would like for them to do. So in terms of immune function and health, we want to make sure that our mineral supplement has a good amount of zinc, of copper, like he said, at least 1,500 parts per million of copper, some manganese, and some selenium. Now, I know there are places in Tennessee that are selenium deficient, but in general, I don't know of those areas right around in here.
That's true. For the most part, normal levels of selenium in a mineral is sufficient.
Right. The other thing that we're concerned about from an economic standpoint in terms of minerals is fertility. A lot of those minerals that I just named, the zinc, the selenium, the copper, the manganese, those are all incredibly important in the finer points of reproduction in animals. And if you've heard me give a talk literally anywhere, you know that I will say, without reproduction, none of the rest of it matters. Everything influences reproduction, but without reproduction, nothing else matters because that's our product, that's what impacts our bottom line. So we need to make sure that our mineral supplement is addressing fertility and making sure that those animals have what they need.
And it's also important to remember that at different times of the year, our cattle are feeding on different supplements. And to me, even grass is a supplement. And as cattle tend to move during this time frame from hay over to a larger majority of grass, we need to keep in mind that this young grass, this really early grass, lots of times is deficient in some of our minerals, and therefore we need to make changes in our mineral program. Just as we've taught for years and years, grass tetany caused by magnesium deficiency, we need to be feeding a mineral that's higher in magnesium now. And that in itself brings up some things to be considered because magnesium is not very palatable. So you may have to kind of play around a little bit with your mineral mix. The other thing to think about is lots of times we tend to supplement a lot of these cattle with byproduct feeds. And one of the easiest byproduct feeds to get a hold of in this part of the world is corn gluten. And it's a good feed. It's almost devoid in calcium. So we need to make sure that we feed a higher calcium to phosphorus ratio if we're feeding a lot of gluten. Also, it tends to be a little higher in sulfur, which is antagonistic to copper, so we need to bump those copper levels up. And there's not time in any video to give you a full lesson on mineralization, but by all means, contact your nutritionist, contact us. We'll be glad to work through that with you. The other thing to think about is people come to me and they say, you know, I tried that mineral stuff you were talking about. I went and got a bag of that loose mineral and poured it out. They're eating me out of house and home. Well, look at that tag. It tells you they should eat this many ounces per head per day on the average. You know, if it says 3.5 ounces per head per day and you got, we'll say 20 cows out there, that's 70 ounces a day. So that's almost 5 pounds of mineral a day. So that 50-pound bag it's not supposed to last a month. It might last about 2 weeks. So that's normal. So the rule of thumb is measure what you're putting out there, have an idea of what they should eat, and you might be surprised they might be eating just exactly what they need to. But if they're overeating for a few days, wait a couple of weeks and see whether or not they back up to that recommended amount. But by all means, they need to eat at least the recommended amount.
One final point I would make as well is recognize we can do a lot of different things with our minerals. We talked about having a high mag mineral in the springtime to help counteract the lack of magnesium in fresh grass. There are lots of minerals out there that have fly control added into them,
Exactly.
and some ionophores and things of that sort. So a mineral is not just a mineral. We can do a lot of different things with that are very beneficial and advantageous to us as cattle producers.
And go back and take a look at our fly control video and you'll find out what we're talking about with some of the fly control methods by minerals. And as always, we thank you for stopping by the tailgate and talking to us. We look forward to seeing you again. Everybody stay safe, enjoy the warm spring weather, and have fun with your garden.
Bye, guys.